Ready?
Ready.
We are ready.
Are you live streaming?
We are live streaming.
Okay, recording.
And
Perfect. All right, I'd like to call this Monday, August 10th, 2020, Sylvania Board of Education meeting to order. If you'll call the roll, please, Lisa.
Vicki Donovan-Lyle.
Here.
Julie Kaufman.
Here.
Shannon Sapersky.
Here.
Bruce Lanslitsky.
Here.
Greg Feller.
Here.
Please say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And first up is public participation for items that are on this evening's agenda. And
There's no sound in the live stream. It's on.
Is there a lot of public participation?
I think it might be on now.
Oh, okay.
I just dial 9, Lisa.
9 is the number.
Okay, Christiane Lehman, if you're watching, we're calling you for public participation.
Hello?
Christiane?
Yes.
Hi, this is Vicki Lyle calling, Board of Education. My colleagues and I are here, and we are in the public participation section of our meeting, and I see you
Okay.
requested to speak to us. So if you could kindly state your name and address for the record, and then provide us with your comments, we'd appreciate it.
Yes. My name is Christiane Lehman. I live at 5858 Summit Street in Sylvania. And I am a Sylvania resident and have been for approximately 20 years. I'm also a Northview Sports Booster member. And I am 100% in support of the schools having a sports season. I have multiple children that have been in the district for the last approximately 13 years, who have been involved in numerous clubs and sports programs within the Sylvania district. I do believe that the kids need this now more than ever. Our kids want to be a part of the community, which is also very supportive and encourages the athletes of all levels. My boys have greatly benefited from their time and effort into many of the sports programs that are offered. As a booster member, I see firsthand how our support encourages those athletes through annual fundraising, membership, scholarships, on top of all the amazing equipment and gear we are able to supply each team with. I'm a proud supporter and volunteer of my time at games with program sales, 50/50, and our annual fundraiser. Giving back to this community is where it's at, so please reconsider allowing the sports season to continue. These kids will and can adapt under these circumstances. This is what our community needs right now, and this is what our kids need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And with that, we are to the athletics under COVID presentation.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. This evening we are going to have a presentation for both our athletic directors on athletics under the COVID circumstances and what it will look like, pros and cons, and an overview. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Jim for their presentation. I'm going to move back, so if you guys want to move forward, if that's okay. Do you have a clicker, or you can hit the screen if you would like, if those work. So move out of your way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
So I'm going to begin. My name is Jim Huss. I'm the athletic director at Southview High School, and my colleague here is Chris Earle, who's the AD at Northview High School. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the literally hundreds and hundreds of student athletes who participate in athletics in Sylvania schools. I'm also a dad of two students, two student athletes in Sylvania schools. My son Colin is a junior soccer player at Southview. And my son Jacob, whose 13th birthday is today. He's our youngest, and he plays football at Timbers from Pines 2 this fall. So I trust that what you're going to do is in the best interest of all the student athletes in Sylvania schools. I know it's a tough decision, both with our learning plan and with the future of athletics this fall. So thank you for your service. Hopefully Chris and I will be able to answer any questions that you have. We're going to cover a number of topics tonight that will hopefully give you some information and make your decision, or make it a well-informed decision. We're going to discuss the summer practices and the current safety practices, the pros and cons to having a fall sports season. The NLL and Toledo area schools plans as far as their current athletic situation is. We also came up with return to play guidelines as a league. We're going to discuss that. We're going to give you a brief overview by the numbers. So the numbers of student athletes who may have come in contact with someone who's COVID positive, or those who actually tested positive for COVID. And then at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is the summer and current safety practices. This form here, and Chris used something similar at Northview. This form is used every time that any athletic team gets together, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's outside on the soccer field, or in the gym. They use this form. Each student is checked in. They go over the symptoms, and then we take the temperature of each athlete as well. So anytime if a student has any of these symptoms, or if their temperature is above 100.4, then we turn them away. They're not allowed to participate that day. This is something that we started in the summer and we continue to do on a daily basis. The coaching guidelines are guidelines that our coaches were given prior to their summer trainings. Chris, again, Northview did something similar. But these guidelines were based on the Ohio Department of Health recommendations, the OHSAA recommendations, and the CDC recommendations. We have site-specific guidelines, for instance, the weight room. And these could be different from what they do at Northview. In our weight room, we're allowed 20 athletes at a time and 2 coaches. For the main gym, this is what we went by in the summer. Initially, it was limited to only 10 athletes at a time. That number has since been lifted. And so right now, we have open gyms for our boys and girls basketball teams. Any athletes who are not participating are on the sidelines, though, and they're distanced apart. But as you can see, and you have a link to this as well, we include mandatory main gym, even the outside facilities as well. The coaches, like I said, were given this at the beginning of the summer. They had to sign it, understanding that they accepted what we put in place, and we have a copy of the signed document. So in addition to that, we're still requiring athletes to bring their own water bottles, so there's no sharing of water. We just had a fountain installed in our athletic hallway, water bottle fountain that was installed. That was just turned on recently. Our locker rooms are still closed until further notice. We've installed additional hand sanitizer dispensers in the athletic hallway and encourage athletes after a certain amount of time to go out and sanitize their hands. We've also increased the cleaning routines, not only by our coaches, but also the custodians. And on that note, so our weight room, for instance, is closed between 6 and 8 a.m. every morning to give the custodians a chance to sanitize all the equipment. And we still adhere to the practice that no visitors are allowed at our practices. And this all is for contact tracing purposes. So we do have the attendance sheets. We don't allow visitors in, just in case there is a COVID positive. In addition to that, we required all athletes to sign a waiver of liability. We have those on file, and since fall sports have started, we've updated the waiver. We got it from the board attorneys, and that's been added to our final forms that all students and parents are required to sign before they're allowed to practice this fall. And the last thing I want to talk about. Nope.
You want to present on this here and there?
And this is our COVID-19 flow chart. We give a number of scenarios, 3 as you can see. And we've distributed this to our coaches in case there's any question. First scenario deals with any athlete or coach who tests positive with no symptoms. And if you follow along, it just gives the coach or the positive athlete a step to take in case that's the situation. Just last week, we added definitions of what contact means. And this is based on the CDC definition of what contact with a COVID-19 positive person is. And these are just the collage of pictures showing our athletes practicing safety protocols. And then the Northview coach, if you want to click on that, Northview's volleyball coach put together this video. I don't know if you want to speak on this, Chris, but
Yeah, so we just picked a sport from one of our schools, and again, the pictures that were on that previous page have to deal with what we're doing right now. It's fall-wise, which is very similar to what we did during the summer. And as you can see, as far as the social distancing, if you walk through our buildings, both North and Southview, we've added a ton of hand sanitizing stations. In addition to, we have product from our custodial and Don Watson, that crew, as far as being able to clean equipment, things like that. And volleyball was just, I had asked one of my coaches to put together pictures in a video format of just showing what they're doing. As you can see here, even the volleyball girls are taking it to the point where they're wearing masks during their whole practice right now. They want a season and they want to play. So we did a good job just kind of taking some footage, and this is what they do every day. So I'll step in, and I'll echo what Jim said, just with you guys sitting here listening to us. Kind of, you've heard a lot of people talking, of course, over the last few days. We're here fighting on behalf of our kids. Like Jim, I have a daughter still at Northview. A couple graduated. Extracurriculars, in addition to sports, were a big part of their career, big part of their experiences. We've come up with kind of some pros and cons. Obviously, there's going to be some negatives and some positives to this. So the con list that we put together in front of you, and we're not trying to hide anything. Obviously, one of the negatives of us continuing on, whether it's non-contact, contact, is potentially contracting this virus. Obviously, there's a risk to that involved. Jim mentioned final forms. We definitely have to. Final forms is a great tool that we get a lot of paperless information out to parents, and they sign off and understand kind of what our procedures and policies are. One of them now, we've added COVID to that list of, you need permission. There's a good risk of injury. There's a minimal risk of death when you're involved with a sport. You see a case or two throughout the country every year of an underlying heart condition or something like that. Parents sign off on that. And now there's somewhat of a marginal risk of contracting COVID, so they sign off and understand that risk is there. Another con is the optics of this. You know, we are remote learning or we're not in school 100%. You know, people are going to question why are we allowing kids to still come to our campus and or in our building. You're going to get, you know, you split it in half. We've heard pros and cons of that. As you came in, you saw some support outside showing that, hey, if you don't have sports, there's going to be some upset people as well. There are some increases in expenses potentially. With custodials, we mentioned they're helping us clean. We put more hand sanitizing. Transportation, how many kids can we get on a bus when we go to away events, those sorts of things, and supplies. And of course, the one that Jim and I definitely wanted to put on there is that even though we want kids to be able to participate and continue with what we've been doing the last 2.5 months, we're gonna lose revenue, and we generate our own budget athletically. So most of you are aware that ticket sales pushes our budget. Pay to play helps offset salaries and transportation. Jim and I don't get any of that pay to participate, which is fine. We're willing to. We get there's going to be a decreased revenue. I say expectation. I guess as we move forward. Moving on to the next the pros to having this, and you've heard OHSAA. They're big on the education-based athletics. This is an extension of the classroom. So those sorts of things, this teamwork and, you know, the socialization and teaching kids about time management and, you know, life's relational. These kids are going to relate and get together. If we're not offering extracurriculars, even on a remote schedule, after our 3 o'clock day, they're going to get together. They're getting together right now. What we've been offering to this point for the last 2.5 months is at least it's a controlled environment. Our coaches are constantly telling, keep your pods small. You know, we want to have a season. Like I mentioned, the last 2.5 months, I mean, it's been, we'll get to where we definitely have numbers where we've had kids and or family members that have tested positive or we've quarantined. We'll get there shortly. Obviously, the physical and mental health of being involved, especially in physical activity with athletics, is there. Keeping our kids in Sylvania, whether it's students, just academically, in addition to a lot of our private schools have stayed wide open. We have had kids withdrawing from our schools. We've seen it from an academic standpoint, and in addition, kids are making that move athletically. And as people have been saying, athletics is a choice. Parents and athletes are going to choose to participate. If they're uncomfortable, everybody's level of comfort with this virus is different. If they're uncomfortable, I mean, they have the option of not participating, where if they want to participate, that option is there as well. Just to review some of the local schools around us, we started with the NLL schools. We're conference-based schools, Sylvania being 2 of those. So these 6 schools, we put what they're doing at the current moment. I know the Lucas County Health Department had a meeting today with the local superintendents, and at this current moment, I know some of their boards have not got together since then. But if you go through Anthony Wayne, they're back, they're practicing sports, they're competing with non-contact sports right now. Bowling Green, they're continuing with the OHSAA guidelines, so they're very similar to Anthony Wayne. Maumee, right now their sports are practicing, but they've postponed their competition until their board can get together and make a decision. Napoleon and Perrysburg are very similar, where sports are practicing and they're competing. As far as non-contact goes, just following the OHSAA's guidelines. And then Springfield right now, they suspended their sports, I think, late last week, Thursday or Friday. So their board's getting together on Wednesday. So those were the league schools, and then the other schools that we have just within Lucas County and those that we play as we go through. All of these on here are at least practicing or they're continuing with the OHSAA guidelines with regard to the non-contact. Contact sports right now, the OHSAA is recommending no scrimmages and no competition yet. We'll have to wait for more guidance from them.
In addition, we're waiting on an announcement from the governor. It's supposed to come in the next day or two regarding football and soccer, so contact sports. So the ADs and the commissioner from the NLL got together a number of days, 4 or 5 days straight, and came up with return to play guidelines. That's what Chris handed out to each of you earlier. We basically took the recommendations from the OHSAA and then added some things to that as well that suited each of the schools or schools in our league. We spent a lot of time on this, put a lot of thought to it, presented it to the superintendents, and it passed unanimously 8-0. Some of the things that we're going to keep in mind is we're going to do symptoms testing for all the competing schools. So prior to, if we have an away game, we'll take temperatures before they enter or get on the bus. They have to wear masks while on the bus. Social distancing and mask requirements. So I know our volleyball team, our coach put together a plan and how our seating is going to look for the sidelines, for the players. We're not going to switch sides like they typically do, just to limit exposure to the visiting team. We looked at seating capacity, and that's going to be up to each school to determine what it is as far as numbers go, but we agreed on a 75% of the allowed tickets to be reserved for the home team and 25% will go to the visiting team. We're also going to have social distancing, so we're going to have to mark out in the stands where spectators can sit. Chris and I met with Hometown Ticketing last week to discuss online ticket sales, and I believe every school in the NLL will be doing the same. Not necessarily with that company, but there will definitely be online ticket sales. We've been in talks with BCSN, our commissioner has, about possibly streaming games in case when we limit the number of spectators. And then the commissioner came up with a sign, let's do that, that we'll have at the entrance of each stadium or facility, and essentially just to remind the spectators of the risks they may have to take upon entering the facility. And again, like I mentioned, these are sport-specific recommendations by the OHSAA that we'll be following, in addition to others that we came up with as a league.
And to piggyback off Jen, we don't know what seating capacity is. What the OHSA has not come and gave us any guidance with that, so we're kind of waiting to hear that. Initially, maybe a month or so, two months and a half ago, they were talking about half capacity up to 2,500 people, depending on the facility, but that's not, we're still waiting for guidance from Columbus, so we don't know that number.
And Chris and I came up with these numbers. So this is a collective between the two schools. And this is from beginning of June until now. These are athletes, coaches, or immediate family members of the athletes who have either tested positive or who we've had to quarantine. So in all, and again, we're talking about hundreds of athletes here. There have been 6 COVID positive athletes between the two schools, and we've quarantined a total of 39 athletes. And what that means is they have to stay away from practice for at least 14 days, even if they come back with a negative test. And the reason for that, from what it said, it takes at least 14 days for the virus to incubate. So if on day 10 they come back with a negative test, they could still catch it on day 11. So that's why we extend that to the full 14 days. There have been 2 coaches who have tested positive and 2 quarantined. Are they the same, Chris? Oh, you know. And these are numbers that we're aware of, obviously. And then immediate family members of athletes were aware of 7 COVID positive tests.
I think a good thing to point out here is that to our knowledge, again, we're using contact tracing and things like that, of those 6 athletes and 2 positive coaches is not related or traced back to actually participating in a practice or a workout over the summer. They've traced it back to a gym that they worked out at or something like that. An athlete might have been a family member. So a great point to this slide is that with what we've been doing with safety procedures is that, we're creating a safe environment, we're removing, asking people to quarantine or isolate. We have had 3 teams, we've had 2 coaches quarantine, so 2 of those teams we shut down for 14 days. We have to learn to live with this virus. It's around. It's not going to go away, but we are following what the guidelines are suggested by the CDC. So, not suggesting moving forward that no one in our athletic families are going to either come in contact with somebody that was positive or come down positive themselves. It's going to happen when we get done. But these are, like Jim said, these are the numbers for the first week of June. That's it. All right. Questions for us?
So quick question, so when you said 6 COVID positive, were they tested in the school, or they tested, how did you get access to them?
So it's up to the parent or family to test their.
So those are the 6 that came forward and said
Yes.
our kids are positive, so, okay.
So coaches are notified, and then coaches notify us, so they go through a process.
Do you know the approximate number of student athletes? Because when I'm looking at the number of cases here, and again, learning about our district, how many students would you say are participating in practice since the implementation or identification by the numbers? What's that look like? Is that 1,000? Is that 800? Is it 2,000?
I can speak to Northview's numbers. For example, last year, if you look at of all 26 sports that we have, there were 700 some kids that participated in athletics. Some of
Okay.
those are repeat, they're more than one sport athletes, but like Jim had mentioned, it's hundreds. And between the 2 schools, you figure in over 1,000 different kids participate probably in
In the fall?
athletics.
Okay. Thank you.
Was that just in the fall, or that's year round?
Year round.
Yeah.
So remember, the summer, Julie, is
Oh, I know.
teams are working out in the state. Basketballs are going on right now, as far as open gyms and weight room and things like that. So not all 26 sports in both of our schools obviously utilize the summer, but
So at Southview, I want to say our fall sports registrations on final forms is between 275 and 300, I would say. But some of these numbers could include the other sports who practiced in the summer that aren't necessarily fall sport.
they most definitely include all those games outside the call.
Yep.
So just basketball, do they fill out their final forms then before they practice?
So they're still really operating, Shannon, on that form that they signed for summer workouts. The OHSA has allowed us to extend into August. August used to be a no contact period for
Right.
any non-fall sport. Because we lost the spring, they opened that up. So they really opened up August to every team. So they're still covered as far as coming to open gyms and that waiver that they signed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so, well, I know they do that every year, so, I mean, basketball practices in the summer, so they don't do final forms though until basketball
Registration
season.
opens.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
How does so the OHSAA came out with like a 6-game football schedule, didn't they?
On Friday.
How does that, so obviously they're planning on having games,
There.
so is that,
Well, once the governor gives the okay, because right now we're still, contact sports aren't allowed to compete against other schools.
and that's just football and soccer?
Football, soccer, and field hockey, whatever.
And then to their stance last Friday, which came out Friday afternoon, it starts the week of August 24th is
Right.
what they said, football.
Right.
So, they took that survey, and the results of that survey, some districts were, hey, we want a full regular season, and some, certain percentage said we want at least the whole postseason. So that's what they went down to 6. You can still play 10 games if you choose not to go into the playoffs. There's different, but they're ready to. The OHSA right now is comfortable with starting that the week of August 24th.
So if we were to say green light all sports, we still have to wait for the governor to approve the contact sports.
The contact sports right now, all non-contact are rolling right now.
Right.
That includes tennis, the golfs. They included cross country, and then they relabeled that volleyball.
Are we having, so is volleyball, are they playing games yet?
scrimmages.
Okay, they're scrimmaging, and are there spectators, or?
Depends on the site right now, so.
Okay.
We scrimmaged at Wasion, and they did allow spectators.
Okay.
But the AD sent something out in advance that masks are required. They have their own set of guidelines, and that's something we'll do when we compete against a non-NLL school. We'll share our guidelines with them in advance.
Speaking to Northview, we have a volleyball scrimmage tomorrow with 2 schools. There are no fans. We have the ability to live stream it, so we're going to put it on a YouTube channel so parents can sit at home and watch. We'll take temperatures of every athlete and coach coming in from the other 2 schools, and each school will have their own location of where they're going to be at within the gym, and so we're still operating that way just because we're going to have more than one school in there as well. But locker rooms are still shut down. We don't plan on opening locker rooms anytime soon.
In this presentation, you said this is all NLL, like this is all.
Yes.
I mean, aside from.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate
Thank you.
your presentation, quite
Appreciate your
informative.
time.
I'm smiling.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And again, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Do you have our emails or phone numbers?
We know how to reach you.
Yes, there you go.
We're not voting against tonight, we just generally, we are voting.
What do we do? We're not voting, it's a discussion on how to proceed. And we don't have a voting item on the agenda. I think right now, because we're doing what we're doing, we would really be voting to do something different. And right now, we're just continuing with practices for all sports, making sure everyone's feel comfortable with that and moving forward. At this point, we would probably have to vote if we felt different, but we would have to have some type of action. Because kids are
Right.
golf is in swing, everything is in swing, so you would have to vote to stop what we are doing.
So, as things stand right now, the non-contact sports can practice and compete.
Non-contact is practicing, and for scrimmages like football, they're not competing because they don't start till later.
Right.
But they are practicing every day.
Right, right.
Soccer
And
is
competing.
practicing.
Well, golf is competing.
Golf is,
So
but not
the non-contact sports, as of right now, things stand, they're going.
They're rolling.
Practicing, competing.
Correct. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
So right now, the only thing that's not competing is just the contact sports, which we're waiting for the governor.
But they can practice.
But they can practice,
Correct.
right.
So, and the
Okay, so
idea
every-
is,
okay.
yeah, so the idea is, ironically, we are doing what we want to do.
So we don't need to do anything,
No.
just keep going along.
Correct, because if it was, if you wanted to change it, and personally, I will tell you, my recommendation is this. I want us to continue with sports. I feel strongly that we should continue with sports. The kids have been practicing. When you look at the percentage of the kids who have been exposed or who have issues with COVID or COVID related, it's been minimal compared to the amount of the numbers of students that we have actually involved. If those numbers change or something changes, then we may have to revisit. I think with the contact sports, football and soccer, we're in a waiting pattern. But when we look at everyone else and what they're doing across our conference, everyone is practicing. So the only thing we really need to do is to vote if you want to stop. And I would not make that recommendation at this point.
No, I don't wanna vote
I don't
on
wanna-
it.
no, I don't wanna stop. I think-
I do think it's important though, because I believe the impression from the community is because we're red at this point, that could impact it. So I think it's
Correct.
critical for the statement to be made proactively.
Correct. And we will have a statement that, after tonight, we will have a statement that's put out by a press release that states that, because we want the kids to stay involved. And that the two are not necessarily married together or tightly aligned, so.
So if the state comes out, let's say tomorrow, the state comes out and says contact sports can proceed, do we need to do anything, or can they just go start playing games?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
Perfect.
I'm good.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate
I will,
that.
I mean, I will say though, our health department said no, right? And that's what we based the schooling on.
Yes, and I will say that the health department is revisiting their stance.
Okay.
I met with them this morning,
Okay.
along with other superintendents, the AEs were on there as well. all due respect to them and working with them in a partnership, they kind of muddied the water, and I think they recognize that they muddied the water in
You
the
think?
statement on Friday.
Yeah.
And as a result, what we shared with them was, you know, you're muddying the water and making it difficult. You're having us go, you're sending conflicting messages. So we were all on a call with him this morning, and we shared with him our challenge and our struggles with what that'll look like. He's gonna continue to work with his folks and take the message down to Columbus to that end. Because we pretty much said, so wait a minute, what message were you sending? So that's where we stand as of today.
But I just wanna make sure it's clear, especially for the public, even given the recommendation, we are continuing forward with sports right now.
Practices will continue, athletics will continue, non-contact sports will go to practice as well as play. And we are only waiting on the governor to say as it relates to the contact sports. And in the event he approves contact sports, we will be contact sport playing as well in competition.
Correct.
And
And
there
with
won't
those
be any action required by
Correct,
any.
because we're just moving as usual. The only thing that may happen, other districts may choose to do something different, but I think we're all on the same page. The majority of the districts are on the same page.
I mean, if they approve contact sports, like, I mean, I think we should have another discussion about it, so that's a whole nother thing.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
If they
Sharon?
approve contact sports to play competitions, I don't have a problem with them practicing, but I
have
just
some
need to,
concerns.
I think we need to think it through if they're gonna be,
If the
playing
governor
any-
says that they have contact sports, if he approves it, you mean the sweep?
right.
Okay, so if he approves it, you think we need to gather to see if we support what the governor is saying is?
Well, because he said to go to school too, and we're talking about not going to school, so.
Well, we can revisit any of that. If you're asking, I think it would be helpful for the community that at this point, I think we need to think philosophically, and for me personally, if the governor supports it, I will be in support of that. So if you're saying you think we all need to gather again to discuss if he is in support, I think that's a conversation we should have. Because for me, time will not change. If he's supporting moving forward with contact sport playing, I'm prepared to have that discussion tonight. I don't need to wait on what he says.
Well, he's supporting going to school, so are we not doing a remote then? I mean,
We can have that
Well, I think
discussion
that's a discussion we
tonight
had.
as well, and I think that's what we're hearing from, we're gonna hear a day in the life of Red. We're gonna hear from Keith on the filtering system that he was presented with on Friday. And we can certainly have all of that discussion.
okay, I mean, it seems like like even though he gives the okay, he always says that it's up to the local. I mean, I don't think it's just an automatic, yes, we're gonna do whatever he said, that's not how it's been presented.
Well, right, because all districts are different sizes, what a rural, small district might do might be very different than what CPS or Sylvania might do, because we have larger numbers. I mean, I think we're gonna keep talking about it, you know, throughout, as things change and.
Sure.
Well, and mainly, I think we need to set some parameters, like if we end up, if our county goes purple or something, like, you know, I just want, so people know what's gonna happen. You know, are we gonna keep playing football if we're purple? Like, that's probably not, but it'd be nice if people know that ahead of time.
Yeah, I think we'll have to sit down and kind of logistically figure things out. I agree. I think we can't just, okay, we're gonna go for, we do have to have logistically contingency plans if something does change. And
So
think
then
we're
I
gonna be
would make
aware
a
of it.
motion tonight that if the governor approves contact sports for me, I would support that, because until such time I've presented other information, if the governor has made the decision, I'm prepared to make the decision tonight that contact sports can play.
So I don't think we have a motion, I mean, we're not voting on this, right? Because right now, we would go forward, we'd have to do something proactively to stop it,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
No, I'm only talking about as it relates to the governor. I agree. I agree that we don't need to do anything because we're moving forward. My only point was with response to Shannon, who asked if the governor says it goes forward, we would need to revisit. And all I said is at this point in time, if he's for it and we're letting things move forward, I wouldn't view that as a reason to have to get together again because he said we could play. So that's, but we can,
But how long, I mean, what if he says, but I'm leaving it up to the local level, then we have to meet and talk about it. I mean, he's not mandating that we play, he's just saying he can, right? I mean, if that were to happen. I mean, that wouldn't really be, I don't feel like that'd be fulfilling our responsibility to just say, oh, whatever he says we'll do, I mean.
No, I agree, I'm not trying to what I'm saying is for me personally tonight, if he said that we could play, I don't need to get together again to say, oh, he said he could play, now how do we feel about it? For me tonight, that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
If
I'm just
everybody
saying
feels like we need to get together after he says we can play,
I
We
mean,
can
yeah,
do that.
are we saying, so are you saying, since you're saying like for me personally, are you saying, so let's say the governor comes out tomorrow and says, yeah, I think contact sports are great unless your county is red, and then I say no. Then I don't think you should do it, but decide for yourself. So you're saying if that's what he said, you'd say no on contact sports, because we're red. in this county.
no, what I said very specifically was if the governor said contact sports can be played without caveats, if contact sports can be played, I don't view him saying that as changing my opinion, that's what I said.
I mean, I think if he says that, we could probably have
Yeah.
a discussion about it.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if he-
that's what
I
I'm
understand
asking.
what
So
you're
you understand what
saying.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm saying like,
Not,
because he could say, because every county is different and every situation is different, so, I mean, we know that like 43560 is like really a hotbed, like in Sylvania, you know, as to the numbers, and Lucas County's red, so that's what I was asking, I think, so you're saying, yes, like if he says, yep, contact sports, but each district decides for themselves, and if you're red, I don't think you should do it.
Yeah, well, then we'll obviously have to, as of right now, he hasn't said
Right.
anything, as of right now, I think we move
We just
forward.
go.
But if he says something different, then, you know, yeah, we'd have to discuss it.
right.
Yeah, I understand what Vicky's saying, I agree, I think, you know, right now, we stay pat, and like I said, if he comes out and says, hey, listen, the red parts of the counties, you need to rethink it.
Right, well, I
Yeah.
think that's just what Shannon was
Yeah,
saying.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
like, I think we would still have to get together and
Right.
find out.
Under that
depending on what
scenario,
he says.
yes,
Right.
under
Yeah.
the governor saying, yes, you can play is all I was saying. Because if he
Right.
says, yes, you can play, and there's no caveats, I don't think there's a reason to have to gather to say, he said we could play, and so we still are. That's not with the caveats that are being introduced.
Okay.
Okay.
Quite frankly, and to be candid, folks, I don't think tonight's gonna be the last time we're talking
No.
about
No.
this anyway.
No.
And I'm hopeful that the numbers subside, I really am. They are still going up from what the health department said today, but regardless, I don't think this is going to be the last time we revisit any of these issues or topics, so stay tuned.
I did want to say though, I've spoken to my son with regards to golf since it started up.
Yeah.
And he has been, and I asked him, was very candid, I said, you need to, kind of, father-son kind of. They've done I will kudos to the coaches if they're listening, and they've done a great job.
Yeah.
They're distancing, they're taking the bus tomorrow to another varsity tournament. I asked them, are you wearing a mask? He said, yes, they've been taking it extremely seriously, and I will say that I think the kids, because they understand what's at stake. And they understand if they don't follow the rules, they're gonna lose the season, and I think they've been very mature about it, and I think they've been very, I've been impressed. I've been impressed at their ability to do that, and I think if we do allow them to continue, I think we will be pleasantly surprised at how badly kids want this and how badly they will follow the norms. I'm pretty confident that just from, I've only got golf to as my reference right now. My daughter's not swimming till swim, so I don't have that reference. I don't know about any other sports, but I do know I've been impressed with the way golf is. It's a small team, so it's a lot easier to
But I think
manage.
that's a
and
pretty uniform experience.
To piggyback on that, my experience is cross country, my daughter runs cross country, they've been doing a great job
Yeah.
too. They wear their masks, they social, they've been doing a very good job, so.
I've heard nothing but positive in terms of the kind of experiences that are happening. And I have driven by Northview and I've seen some of the kids practicing. And I have, I don't stop, but I have been nosy. And I've seen some positive things, I'll be honest. Nothing's caused me to deter and say, I don't think we're doing a good job. I actually think we're doing a pretty good job. Again, golf is my reference point because that's all I've really had
If you go
firsthand.
by Southview and see the band, they're all in
Yeah,
separate places and they're all.
not discounting, I can only speak to what I know. I'm not gonna put any other sport out there because I don't know that. But what I've seen and just my own son's.
Yeah, my
After
son
David's
has
to me.
said the same
Yeah.
about soccer, that they stay, and I asked a basketball player today, and she said they're doing the 6 feet, and so.
Football's practicing in masks.
Yeah, and the
5
practice
to 3
piece,
days,
I'm
so
great
they're
with. I mean,
doing it
continue
right.
to practice as long as you're doing it safely and the kids are happy and they're being safe. I'm okay with the practice. It's just when you get to contact, you have to figure out what's safe and what's not if we have issues. But from what I've heard so far, I mean, things are going well.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that our coaches.
Just one sport though, I can't, I mean, and well, two, cross country, yeah, well, three, soccer.
But our coaches are helping, and I think what we saw today in the presentation, they want it pretty badly. Our kids want it, and I think in order to make sure it happens, they're taking it seriously, especially if you're a senior and you really want to really move forward and go to college with a sport or secure a scholarship. But I'm just pleased that we can give them the extra alternative to be engaged with school life in a different way under these unique circumstances. So,
And the number of students we've heard from.
yes. And
And one more
For them
thing.
to, yes.
And one more thing, I want us to push just as hard for the extracurriculars, like things like, theater, stuff we talked about. I think those things should receive just as much exposure, and those kids should have an opportunity to science club, math, whatever the different speech and debate, all those programs should have an opportunity to have those experiences. Because a lot of kids are not in sports and they're waiting to do those other experiences because, and I think we need to make sure that those kids get the same due diligence that we give into the sports.
Our trial has an online competition
Well, yeah,
in September,
yeah,
so.
exactly. So no, I think-
So what
I
you're,
think
and
a lot
my
of kids
point
are
of that
waiting.
is not to highlight mock trial, but what has happened in the extracurricular side, they're pivoting to virtual too, because they understand and appreciate speech and debate, various methods like that. They've got to offer this in a different manner so kids can participate.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I think we're moving on to another presentation. We are looking at item 4.1, remote learning. We have Alex and Karen here again this evening. Thank you for joining us, Karen and Alex. I will move to the back of the room. Last week, it was quite popular with our families and board members to understand the day in the life of a student under the hybrid plan. And I followed suit with your recommendation, Mr. Miller, in regards to giving an overview of what this may look like under the red plan, a day in the life of a student, both at the high school and elementary. And please note, this is very general, but it should give you a picture of what it can look like for some of our children. So with that, Karen, I will swap you out.
Well, thanks for having us here, folks. It's been a long time since we've given a presentation. We appreciate the opportunity. I'm sure it's going to be a long time before we're up here again. So, I'm sorry, I've got to qualify a little bit of what the presentation is tonight, tell you where we are with things with the Sylvania Educators Association and the administration. We are currently working on a memo of understanding for the RED plan. And that is in draft stage, and it's this close to being finished. We have a meeting in the morning with secondary administrators to finish that. Once that's finished, we will have really clear details on every last bit of the RED plan. We don't have that right now. And when we came to you last week on Wednesday, we had that in the yellow form. So in the yellow form, we were able to give a presentation that was very detailed and, give you the day in the life of the student. Right now, we're going to give you 4 components of a RED plan that we know are going to be part of the MOU. There are some details, and feel free to ask questions about any of the details, that we have not yet solidified because the MOU is not yet finished. But we can still talk to you about components of the remote learning plan that we know will be in place when the MOU is approved by the union and eventually comes to a board meeting. At that time, when that MOU is in front of you, we are happy to return and give you that very detailed day in the life of that student remote learning. But tonight we're going to talk in a little bit broader strokes about what we're looking at for the remote learning plan, since some of those details are not fine-tuned, and I hate to give a presentation that we then change 2 days later because of some developments in the So last time we talked about our 2 goals. Of course, we're still focusing on safety of all of our students and all of our teachers, all of our staff members, administrators, extended community, and so on. Once we're addressing this issue, then we in teaching and learning have to work within those safety restrictions to create the most rigorous, consistent, engaging education possible. So this one is kind of taken care of first, and then we're looking at this. So Karen and I are working with teachers and administrators to make sure we can accomplish this the best we can within these restrictions.
Obviously, under a full remote plan, students will be learning remotely and not physically in the buildings. We will again use those blended learning techniques that we described under the yellow plan, and this will include, a variety of remote engagements and interactions. So again, when we talk about that term blended learning, this absolutely consists of those synchronous and asynchronous tools in learning, which is live instruction and those recordings that we talked about. So regardless of when students are able to access some of that content and when it fits with the parents' schedules, they're always going to be able to go back to those recordings when they need to and repeatedly if they need to. And again, that will be provided by Sylvania teachers and learning new material and new instruction.
Cast your mind back a little bit to spring in March when this whole thing hit us like a truck, and we realized over the space of a weekend we had to almost completely transform how we conducted education in Sylvania schools. One of the first orders of business for me was partnering with technology to give teachers the capacity to A, do virtual sessions with their students, and B, record lessons so that they could actually do pre-recorded lessons as well. So the synchronous and asynchronous is going to capitalize on the instructional and digital support that we've given starting in March and the capacity that our teachers have built. So our teachers now are no longer scared of Google Meets or Zooms. They're no longer scared of Streamcastify, which is our tool of choice to do video recording of lessons. They know how to video record their screen and their voice and embed their image in there. They know how to do these things now. So we'll be capitalizing on that to make sure that there is a mix of live instruction and asynchronous learning, which will be a little bit more portable and flexible along the blended learning model.
I'm sorry, can you
Please.
define the synchronous and asynchronous? I think a lot of people won't know what
Of
that
course.
is.
Yep, absolutely. So synchronous, you can think like you're all in sync, you're all together live at the same time, and then asynchronous, you would think more of those recordings. So still providing the content, but you're watching a recording that the teacher has made. And there are tools, different tools that you can use for both of those.
You leading or not? Okay. So, digital. Let's talk about digital support. So I just mentioned two very vital tools, video conferencing tools and video recording of lessons. However, when it comes to blended learning, we took a look at our repertoire of digital tools and realized that there are definitely gaps. Gaps that we didn't really notice before quite so pronounced because, well, we were teaching students live, face-to-face. But now we're seeing when we go totally on remote learning, we're going to have gaps in our digital support. Gaps that will lead to problems with remote learning going forward, creating this rigorous, consistent education. So we're plugging those gaps. We are making sure that every place where we need a robust digital tool to work for education, we are making sure that it's there. The first thing, of course, as we talked about before, is Schoology. The overall learning management system, which we discussed at length and some of its benefits, and we're in training. We've been training teachers. We've got 120, 140 teachers trained so far, and school hasn't even started for them. But in addition, we're looking at smaller target areas. So for instance, we've had a reading intervention piece of software that goes on top of our regular curriculum for K-5 called RASKids. It's a way to individualize, do intervention and enrichment. We didn't have a similar component for math. We will. So instrumental music teachers experimented with a software called Smart Music because it was made free during spring. They loved it and can't imagine doing remote learning without it. That will be available. Career tech teachers have been finding pieces of software, other ways in which they can do remote learning. So we are supporting our digital landscape to make sure that those gaps don't exist, and the teachers that need the software in order to move forward with any of the remote learning in a robust fashion have what they need to do that. And so that's been composing a lot of our time, is making sure to work on how we can provide that for all the teachers that need it. Support services will continue. The lessons from spring have taught us that we can still provide those direct services to students who need that in exceptional populations. 3 really come to mind. Special ed services can continue to be delivered remotely. Related services such as occupational and speech therapy can continue to be delivered remotely. And ESL services, actually we're really proud of the ESL support structure we have in Sylvania schools, which is composed of bilingual assistants, ESL teachers, a coordinator, and we actually have a person who this year will be coordinating parent support for our English learner families as well. So that web of support for ESL was strong in the spring, and it needs to be strong because they face some of the most significant challenges to accessing education in our district. So we're going to continue those support services because they were able to be delivered with fidelity during the spring. Finally, something else that we did right in spring was professional learning, professional development sessions for teachers. We had over 40 individual sessions spacing over those, 9 or 10 weeks that we were out at the end of the year. And during those sessions, teachers would learn video conferencing, they would learn how to record lessons, they would learn how to do digital whiteboards, they would learn any one of a number of different instructional techniques or digital tools in which to affect remote learning. During that time, teachers were building their capacity to create remote learning. They were learning. They were students just as much as their students were during the spring. We have that experience because between 1/3 and 40% of our teachers took part in those professional learning sessions at that time. We intend to double down on that. So what's going to happen is a Sylvania landscape behind the scenes where teachers are constantly learning and constantly supported with professional learning sessions. We know how to do this. It's something that we do fairly well. We cultivate talent within, expert teachers who can share best practices and be teacher leaders, as well as pulling vendors from without to provide that guidance on new systems like Schoology or anything else that we adopt and do. So teachers will have constant access to a range of professional development opportunities to help them build those skills and share best practices and collaborate together. So it's always our intention in teaching and learning to help the learning of teachers, sometimes almost as much as we're helping the learning of students, because we realize if we are helping the learning of teachers, then we are then helping our students learn. So we intend to continue to provide those robust professional learning activities so that that is a constant every week thing. Teacher can take a look at a list and say, oh, these are the 5 sessions that are available this week, which one do I want to attend? So that was very successful and popular with teachers in the spring. We intend to keep that going. So those are the 4 components that we can talk to you about now as knowing. We know there will be live instruction and there will be also asynchronous instruction. We can't give you details on the amount during the day, but we know that there will be live instruction for all students every day. We're not quite sure of what the schedule will be. We'll come back and give you the day in the life when we have that. Secondly, we know that our digital support is going to be amplified. We're going to cover the gaps in whatever we need to support there. Thirdly, our related services, support services will continue, and those students in those exceptional categories will lose out on the services. And lastly, we're going to be attending to the teachers. So that's what's kind of going to go into MOU, at least in terms of a teaching and learning and academic perspective. And like I said, we'll come back and give you that story of Marlin to wherever his counterpart is. Do you have any questions for us?
That was great, thank you. That answered all my questions, I think, that I've been getting over the weekend.
Fantastic.
I have a couple of questions. So I said this about Gale, I'm assuming gate will be addressed under the red plan as well.
And as I mentioned last time, Gate was already planning to do remote delivery to find those gaps during the 3 days the students weren't in the building. So they'll continue that model.
And then my second question, so let's say at some point, I'm assuming we're gonna get yellow. So let's say we do have to quarantine a classroom, a building for whatever reason. Will then they go to this red plan? Is that the idea?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. We want to continue the educational process, so
Right.
if we were indeed, and the good thing is, we will have tools in place to make that happen. Because as we begin the school year, we'll already have practice with Schoology, what it looks like, what it feels like. So even if we were to bounce back to hybrid or to green, and say in a month we have to shut down again because of the second wave, we will already have this in place, ready to go, to roll forward, which will be helpful because it won't be new for everyone. Everyone will have some exposure to it. Thank you.
Yeah,
We're gonna-
just-
I do-
yeah.
I do have a question. I know, I said we were done.
How long would it take to flip between,
That's a good question,
Like
and that's something we really have to figure out. One thing, we need to have parents to have their notice so that they can make arrangements, indeed, and then also teachers and their families or what that looks like. It won't be an overnight flip, it's not gonna be like a snow day, but I
Yeah.
envision it will be 2 or 3 days in order to make sure everybody has a safe place. I
I'll say
just
3
don't think we
weeks.
could, yeah, 2 or 3, it depends. If it happens on a Thursday and we have the weekend, could we be ready by Monday? More than likely, yes.
Okay.
But I don't wanna overpromise, because I know it would look different for little ones who may be at home all of a sudden, or not at home, and childcare, and what that may look like.
right, okay.
I'm glad you asked that though, because I remind myself often that all the work we pour into every color I think it's gonna be needed. And we're gonna have to be able to be fluid, so
Right.
it's a lot of work, but I think we're gonna put it all into play.
I don't know, Julie has a question, but I have a
Yeah.
quick statement. I think, starting out on red may be a nice advantage for us because we can get kids and families comfortable with the red. If we do go back to yellow, but you could said if we do have second wave, we do it to flip flop, we're going back to something that's known. It's something they've already experienced, and that could give them, and like I said, we can make that flip quickly then, because they're coming into something they already know and understand, and there's a lot of solace in that, especially when it comes to education. Sorry.
Okay, and I don't think this was covered, but Sala, like if we're red, is Sala gone and all of our students are gonna be taught by
Sala
Slovenian
has been
teachers?
suspended at
Okay.
this point in time. It has been suspended.
Okay.
And they will all be taught by our Sylvania teachers. Our students will be enrolled with a Sylvania teacher.
Okay, that's great.
Excuse me,
Now, how about,
Can you sit up closer to
Oh,
the microphone,
yes,
because they're having
oh.
some trouble hearing
Got
her, she
it.
has no, she
Can I
has
switch
no.
out, Karen?
then my next question would be that if we switch, when, because we know it'll be a when we go to yellow, are those students, are we gonna open Sala back up, and then are we gonna like give another opportunity for people to enroll? I mean, I know that the deadline passed, but then at that point, people may say, okay, wait, I'm still not comfortable with my kid going, so will there be another enrollment period?
We're looking at what that can look like and all the options surrounding that, because we do know that there are some folks who still do not feel comfortable.
Right.
In fact, I had a conversation with Alex and with Julie last Thursday after the administrative retreat. Like, what can it look like? What should it look like? When is the appropriate time to roll back that option to offer Sala? Because I do think, it's been my observation, many parents signed up for Sala in waves. It was first the initial folks who said, no vaccine, I don't feel comfortable coming back to school. Then we had another wave of parents who registered when they found out about the hybrid plan. And that had an influx. Then we had another wave, even after that. So we really need to find out what is the niche and what is the need of the folks who signed up. Was it because they really wanted a civilian teacher every day, all day? We heard that from jump. That was something that people valued. They wanted to have the engagement of a Sylvania teacher. And now we have that. I think what we're also going to find is that remote will provide a lot of the flexibility that Sala provides.
Yeah, but I think the difference is when we have to be clear with people is, because what I did hear from people who signed up for Sala is that they actually thought it was being taught by Sylvanian teachers. And they're like, well, it's Sylvanian teacher. And I was like, well, not quite. There's
It's
support for
supported,
Sylvanian
but not direct
teachers, but,
instruction. Correct.
So I think we'll have to be clear when, because I know it's a when we go to yellow, that, people that have been watching us on red, thinking, oh, this is great, just stay on Sala, that it's not the same.
It is not the
Right.
same.
So we're gonna have to make that
Yeah.
really clear to people that our red is not the same as when we're yellow and we have Sala, that those are.
Correct. Two
Very-
different platforms, two
Okay.
different directions. And I will tell you, I am hopeful as folks see what we are able to accomplish with Schoology and under the red plan, that they will see or have a desire to recommit and have their child have a full experience with a Sylvania teacher in a remote learning environment with the Sylvania curriculum, using Schoology as the platform. I do think they are similar. They're not mutually exclusive, but they are similar. Sala gives you a little more flexibility that you don't have to log in every day at a certain time. But we also, and so attendance is a different issue. But really, I don't think people, there are some folks who have busy schedules who may be essential workers that do need that flexibility. But I think we're gonna be able, as we evolve, how we can provide that through a remote learning plan. And ultimately, if we still have a need, a significant need of what that can look like for our parents, we'll have to figure out what that looks like. Right now, I think we have 1,000 students signed up for SALA because they had one impression and remote wasn't on the table right at the very start. We started SALA sign up back when we said we were going green. So now it's 8 weeks later, we're in a different spot, giving parents that exposure. But do I believe there will still be a portion of families who say, no, you know what, I'm a doctor, my husband's a doctor, we need to do school when we can. We'll have to investigate that, but I think we will have to reevaluate the need and what it looks like and the demand, then design it around that platform.
I actually think if there's 2 doctors, they're probably gonna be okay with getting it.
You might be right, you might be right.
Just saying.
You might be right.
Has the health department in your calls with them given any suggestion about how frequently they're gonna update? Because October 1st is 7 weeks away. We're not even set to start school for 3 weeks away, and to your point about the fluidity, we were green, then we were yellow, then we're red. Is there any sense that you have from the meetings or discussions you've had about updates that they will provide in terms of the recommendations?
Yes,
With
I
those
will share.
changes?
They are monitoring every day and watching the numbers every day and looking for trends and patterns in order that they will inform school districts. I really believe that we will be in contact with them, if not twice a week, at a minimum weekly, to inform districts, this is where we are, this is where we see ourselves going through and progressing through the virus, what they anticipate or have a hypothesis about what it will look like. So I will tell you, we are tethered to one another. It's not going to be, oh, great, we've made the announcement, we'll see you in October. They have a strong desire to stay in communication with us as much as we do with them. So it is a tag team, we're in there together, and the most positive piece about that is that's what we want. We don't want to rest on our laurels and just say we've made this decision and we're gonna roll with it forward. I think we have to have a constant pulse on where we are as a community, where we are as a county, where we are with our students and our families, and what COVID looks like.
Another question, I mean, I'd personally like to see us get yellow as quick as possible. Did they, you may not know this, but did they provide any data or criteria that they're gonna look for when making their recommendations? Like, hey, if we meet ABC, then we can recommend you go after.
Yes, I will tell you, and I'm glad you brought that up because,
Did I just
really,
segue, did I just segue right into?
it's great. No, because one of the pushbacks that superintendents had across the state is there isn't a rubric that exists for all school districts to say, this is when you should flip one or the other. So for example, if there were 8 conditions that were associated to the fact that you should go red, it could be you have 20% of your staff out, you have people or 19 identified cases, whatever those criteria would be, that if you had 5 out of 8 of that criteria, then you should flip to another learning model. And I will tell you, the superintendents actually had an opportunity, a handful or so, about a week and a half ago, met with the governor and said, that's what we're looking for from health departments. So it's not one county flipping and one county not, or one district flipping. If we're going by this criteria, it would be very helpful because then we're using the same measurement to determine when we should be open and when we should not. So I know the health department was intrigued by that thought. I know the last conversation we did last week, they were looking about how they could establish that for school districts. And that was just Lucas County who said that really appealed to them and they were starting to have those conversations. I can't speak to the other counties, but that was an intriguing point for them. To your point, so it's more systemic opposed to, well, we have this and you don't have that, or you could be on one side of the street and on the other side of the street you have something totally different, or on one side of the river and on the other side of the river. So I do know that they're exploring that to come up with a rubric.
All right, I will explore quickly.
I do too. We all found a need for that. And I just also wanted to circle back to be clear, to make sure I'm clear in regards to sports. If I can digress for a moment. I just want to make sure, because I know we have a lot of people watching there, my mask keeps falling down, but, I just wanna make sure for all the folks who are watching that, right now where we stand as a school board, all sports are continuing to maintain their practice regimens. They are still practicing contact and non-contact sports. They are still practicing. Non-contact sports are competing, and that's where we are right now with the Ohio Athletic Association and the governor. If the governor comes out and says later this week that he's recommending that we don't continue with practice or with competing for contact sports, ergo football and soccer. As a board, we're saying that we still want to move forward with competing, or we want to come back and have a discussion, because I think we want to make sure that we're on one page, that we want to continue with sports.
I mean, if he said no, like, I think we need to meet.
And if he says yes, are we saying that we need to meet, or just if he says no?
I guess if he says, but I'm leaving it, if it's not a mandate and it's still left up to the local, then I think we need to at least discuss it.
I think we should get even discuss at that point, if you kind of leave it,
At least
just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we've got all our I's dotted and T's crossed.
And it may depend on where we are, you know, with case numbers and all that too, so.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm comfortable moving forward, but I'm never opposed, like, if my colleagues wanna have a discussion, I support that. I mean, like you said, I think we're gonna keep talking, all the time about all the different arms of this, so, you know, if they wanna meet, I'm more than open to meet, because we don't know what he's gonna say, you know?
Right.
So it's hard for us to tell you right now, well, if he says A with C and D, then we don't wanna meet, but if he says A with E, then we do, I mean, it's easier to say.
I mean, if Big Ten and such, if they actually cancel, I mean, I don't know what he's gonna say, you know, I mean, he may just leave it up to the locals, that's my guess, but.
For me, as we sit right now, I'm good to go with sports continuing. But I'm also, again, if we want to get together and talk it over, I'm not opposed to that.
Okay. Then I will send out a press conference. Do you want to add your thoughts as well?
No, I would agree.
Okay.
I think it'll be, I hope that he knows, if it's simply we continue and he supports OSHA's recommendations, the Ohio School Athletic Association, I would not see a need to get back together, but only if he's very clear and doesn't do other
I
things.
mean, I'm aware, if he said green light, go, but if he kind of say, hey, you decided, then I think we probably need to figure out, okay, what are we gonna put in terms of safety? I mean, just kind of go through all this stuff, yeah, so we're all clear, and the students are safe.
I just want to make sure I'm clear as to what I.
So what did you hear?
I want to form my communication to make sure that I'm clear on what we're doing. And what I'm hearing is, right now, we are moving forward. If the governor makes a statement which really paints more of a gray picture, you would like to have the opportunity for a discussion. But if it's clear that we are moving forward, and he says, no, I'm good with sports, it's all good, we're moving forward, then we just move forward.
I'll be honest, I would even like to have athletic directors come back and share some of the things that they're gonna do to make sure that the athletes are safe.
For contact
Yeah,
sports.
for contact sports. I mean,
Yeah.
non-contact, I'm good to go.
I mean, we did have some email, I mean, I guess I don't know if everyone did, but I know I had some emails from medical people who said, like, there should be no football, no soccer, so, I mean, I think it's still.
So it'd be nice if Chris and Jim came back, kind of say, hey, this is kind of what we're gonna
This
be
is our
doing,
plan.
how we're gonna run the programs, here's what coaches do. Just to make sure everyone in the community is aware of how this is moving forward, because if they are contact, I mean, kids are going to be passing stuff around, they're bringing that stuff back into our community. So we need to kind of make sure that we're, as a community, understanding how all these precautions are going to be done. Not to say we're going to say no, it's the fact that we just
Right.
want to make sure that we understand how all that's going to work, and make sure that the students are understanding how that's going to work, so they're not blindsided by, we're doing what, we're doing what, we're doing what. Parents have to understand, and the students need to understand kind of how we're going to move forward.
I like that. Okay, then I will make sure my statement articulates that to be clear, so thank you for
Absolutely.
allowing me to digress. I believe that's all of our presentations, but we do have Mr. Lyons here this evening to discuss a little bit about the air purifiers. We couldn't get our representative here with such short notice, but he is going to provide a little overview before we jump into our agenda items. Mr. Lyons?
Yeah, very brief. I talked with Vicki on Friday night. We had a task force meeting on Friday, and I mentioned a meeting that I had earlier in the day. And so Vicki asked me if I'd talk a little bit. We were hoping to get Amy Jackson to come and speak to you, and she will. She's more than willing to. At a later meeting, as soon as the schedule, she just wasn't able to come tonight. But Amy Jackson is, she's a parent of Central Trail kids, and she came to our operations team via SSPO. And they said, you might want to talk to Keith and that team, because we have some valuable things to share. She's a physical therapist with ProMedica Health Systems. And she's also, she's a lead on their evidence-based practice team. So they do a lot of research and things like that. So she wanted to come and talk about disinfecting, different kinds of disinfectants, some better than others, and price, some cheaper versions and things like that. That was a good portion of her presentation and our discussion, and I would tell you that it went really well, because we felt very good about the things that we were doing when she shared, and so it was an excellent meeting. At the end of it, she talked about air quality and different increased ventilations, and we talked about filters and different MERV numbers and things like that. And the good news is our MERV numbers, which is the quality of the filters, are as high as our systems will allow, and right up there at the top. So those kinds of things. In the discussion, she talked also about air purifiers, and that's what sparked the interest when I mentioned it at the task force meeting. So they've done some studies on air purifiers, and she recommended an Austin air purifier that has, I'll read some of the details. It has a medical grade HEPA technology in it, 95% effective on all pollutions. It has a 0.1 micron. And the claim at that time was, well, it's still the claim, that it will kill COVID virus, which is what exactly sparked everyone's interest. So she was able to, she did some research for us before she came, and basically these air purifiers are around $715 is what the price was listed. It appears that she would be able to, and by the way, she's not connected to this company, so she just came to help us out. Has no connection. So it looks like we would be able to get a 30% discount by purchasing the number that we would for our classrooms. She is. We expressed some interest to her, and she said, "Let me do some more of your legwork and some more of your research." Well, that was Friday, so we're at Monday night. We don't have a lot of information beyond that. They did do some studies even on the noise, because that's a big issue in our buildings. With when you have to run your fans and kids sit too close, they can't hear. This has 3 different settings, and the purifier continues to work. It just doesn't circulate the air as much. So those came back really, really good when you turn them down, when the kids are in, they don't make a lot of noise and things like that. So we asked her to check on some other pieces. We just started down this road. So it sounds as though they are on like a 2-week order right now. So it's not like it's terribly backed up for a long period of time if we would decide to go this direction. But we really haven't vetted out this beyond and other systems. Is this one absolutely the best one or not? But we trust what she has to say and her expertise to make a recommendation. We felt really good about that. So
Is it the HealthMate Plus,
HealthMate Plus, yes, that's it. Austin Air
Austin
HealthMate
Health Plus?
Yep.
Yep.
Is the one that she's recommending. she did follow up a little bit and said, the distributor told her that at the time, this is the only one that truly kills COVID. And when she talked to other people, I can't say exactly who, they said, now technically, any of them that have this certain filter can make that claim, but this one, we believe, is the best one for these reasons. So I wanted to, it's not the only one out there, and I think that might have been what some people heard on Friday when I mentioned it in the task force meeting. There are others, but they're recommending this one. So we are, we're looking into it. Certainly this could be something that I think someone said could be a game changer for our air quality, and I don't disagree with that.
They're on sale.
We're trying to.
Are we all buying them?
They're on sale for
There you go.
So-
Order them, Greg.
So we,
Welcome to your business.
I have invited Amy, if we have another meeting, even, if we have another
You mean
meeting
Monday
later
on
this
another
week,
meeting?
she would be more than willing to come as long as her schedule is such that she can come. She's very knowledgeable, and, I was just really grateful that she reached out to us and offered to help, so.
In that regard, Veronica, are you expecting us to have to gather soon on the Redden money?
Yes, absolutely.
Like this week soon?
Yes. I'm hopeful.
So could you maybe ask her for like Thursday evening?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
see if
And
that's.
I told her I thought probably about Thursday might be, based on what I knew, could be a potential time, and she said she thought that would be okay. So I can reach out to her tomorrow morning, or when I go back upstairs.
Also, I read the movie theaters are opening up, and they're using a filtration system at AMC. That's also, they're saying 99% COVID in the air. So you want to just give them a call and say, hey, what do you use?
Yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Just to
Can
kind
we
of
get
give
a
us a,
discount?
because I mean,
Yeah.
Vicky and I talked afterwards. I said, hey, let's talk, because to me, this is a game changer. I mean, if we can clean up the air, and we can get it out of the air, so when kids are sneezing, coughing, we can filter.
I agree.
I mean, that's so preventative. I mean, to me, that's like, hey, we can do that. We can go back to yellow. I mean, we can. I mean, I feel comfortable then saying, hey,
Well,
feel safe. Yeah. I mean,
and beyond that, COVID's here to stay for
Right.
a while. Like, this is
Right.
long term.
this
so.
helps us purify the air. Kids can breathe. They can, even though they have masks, it feels like it could be a safer environment for them.
Yeah.
to
For our
to
staff
be-
and for our students.
Yeah, for everybody in the building.
Yeah, the filters in these, that was one of my first questions, like how often the filters, like what's the expense on those? They have to be changed every 5 years, which is way less than I ever thought. I just think going this direction, our operations team's looked into a lot of things, thermal scanning and all that kind of stuff that to me feels like a novelty.
No, this to me
Yeah.
feels like
This
the
is
right.
something
yes.
for real,
Yeah.
and if we're gonna spend money on something, I think this is a long-lasting, well, it's good for people, period.
Yeah, instead of
But it is,
COVID.
it will be a really large expense, so I just.
How many classrooms do we have roughly?
And offices. And
Yeah, we're still trying to get an exact number on that. Alan was out on Friday, so we're working on trying to get all that nailed down, and where do we need them?
My question is, like, is it one unit, because it goes on square footage of what it can handle. So like if we put one in a teacher's lounge, which can be maybe 2 classrooms or like, I'm assuming it's gonna have to, some rooms may require 2, some rooms may require 1.
Yeah, good question, and we started down that road. They make a smaller unit that is good for 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. It's a smaller, and that number might be wrong, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that's accurate.
The Health Mate Plus treats 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, okay.
How much is that one, Greg?
Well, on this item, on it's 441.
Oh, okay, I was the same price. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
but this one would be more for a classroom, like she was envisioning one of these would work in a big, in a normal size classroom.
how big is our average classroom? Just a spitball number. I mean, I know you don't have it. Just
I have that actually written down upstairs when we were doing the desks. 800, I think about 800 square
so
feet.
that would fit perfectly.
About
So that
800 square feet, 850, 900,
Okay,
something
so
like that.
one unit fits, I think, would be.
Yeah, so one of these bigger units would be the right, and again, we wanna, that's the things that we don't have answers to, like, we need to talk to them and say, okay, we have this many classrooms that are this size, what size do we need, and that kind of stuff, so. And we're excited about the opportunity and possibility, so, stay tuned.
And
Thank
Lisa,
you.
is there any money that you're aware of? I know there's a variety of funding sources for a variety of things. Is there anything based just generally, understanding you don't know the specifics yet, that funding could apply to?
I mean, we have the coronavirus funding, we would use that. I don't know specifically any funding associated with a type of purchase like this, but there are different types of funding available.
So perhaps some assistance if that looks like a viable option.
So when are we gonna have a follow-up conversation on this, Thursday?
Yeah, I would say whatever you end up with the next
And
board meeting,
Thursday
as
is a
long as
reasonable
Amy can
time.
make it to come and get more details, I'm sure she will. So.
Okay.
I know that we're supposed to meet, I believe, we need to discuss the remaining aspects of the MOU for remote learning.
We met with elementary today on that. Secondary will be tomorrow at 9 a.m. Hopefully have that wrapped up on our side. Get it to the SEA to see if they approve of it, and then hopefully have it here on Thursday.
That's our goal.
So
All right,
Thursday night, good for
I'd love to
everybody.
know how many we need, how much it costs.
Yeah, we'll try to get those nailed down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that gets us.
Yeah.
This gets
At
us
least it
moving
might
in the
work.
right
No, I
direction.
agree,
That's all
yeah,
that.
I agree.
is while we're on the subject, Thursday night good for everybody?
That's what I'm
So
saying.
I was just checking.
Block
Oh,
that out.
I think
Yeah,
you
we
better.
want it.
Do you wanna do 5 or 7, what works
I
best
like
for you?
five.
I like 5 too, please.
5, does that
I
work
think
for
we're-
everyone?
On the 13th. Is there a way to get the company to come out? The filtration company to come out and do that? The actual company? Because they might be able to send a rep
Right.
to us on Thursday, say, hey, if you're,
Yeah,
Right,
it's-
right, we're like
they might wanna
interested, send us a rep, yeah. Maybe demonstrate it, how it works.
So I will reach out to Amy and have a discussion and see what we can find out.
And if for some reason her schedule, if 5 o'clock works great, but if there's a wrinkle with her that I can't do 5, but I can do 6, let us know because we will make ourselves
Right,
available.
and I told her we could be flexible if we
Yeah.
can, so, okay.
Because I think this is imperative to get all of the, as much detail and information as we can.
Because if we go with this, I'd like to get this as quickly as we can, so we can, because once those get installed, I think we can start to think about.
Yeah, and 2 weeks was 4 days ago, so who knows, you know what I mean, like,
Right.
you know how that goes with things
Well,
being ordered, so.
I mean, we can't control that, but if we're proactive in getting them ordered, then I mean, that's up to them. They come when they come, I mean, we can't control that.
I mean, from today, we're 3 weeks school. from
Yep,
today,
so it's still very doable, perhaps.
I mean, it's possible, I mean,
And are they hardwired or are they just plug in?
I think they're plugged.
Plug in.
Right.
yeah, plug into the wall.
Yeah, we had it. We all want one problem.
Indeed.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Myers.
Cool. Thank you.
And guess what, we're still with you on HR.
Yeah.
But thank you for all that
So
information.
if I can jump back to Veronica, I texted Veronica earlier, the SEA approved this MOU, this afternoon. And it's I call it a relatively simple MOU with the cuts and the amount of time frame that we have. It's about a transfer day. So it's for people to be able to bid on the open positions and such, and to expedite the process for the, to get people back into, so they know where they're gonna be.
So they'll select a job.
Assigned wise, yeah.
Okay.
And, obviously not it won't work out that way for everyone. I asked Veronica if, I know, first of all, let me say, I know you're not allowed to walk on
walking this on?
items, so.
Wait, you're gonna ask us to vote on this now? Is that
That's-
what's happening
well,
right now?
And here's the other part, because of the timeline, we wanna have the job fair on Wednesday if we can, so that we can keep going down the process. So we worked on this Friday.
If you don't vote for people, we don't have to, he's asking.
Right, I'm asking if you would, if you're not
So you worked
comfortable.
on Friday, when did they vote on it?
At,
Today?
1 o'clock today or something like that. So,
And if you do not feel comfortable, by all
Well,
means.
I mean,
By all
I can read it now, I would just say like, even if they voted on something at 1 and you want us to vote on it at 5, like, email it to us at 3. Say, hey, I wanna put this on, so that.
Well, it looks like we're opening up maybe retirement.
I'm sorry?
Retirement, can you speak to
Yeah,
that?
that's part of it. If we made it part of the thing, if they would like to go ahead and retire, we would allow them to do so.
Because I have had a couple
Right,
calls.
and that, Dan had mentioned that he had some people reach out who were wondering, so.
So that basically is what we did in June, where we opened that window
Correct,
again.
right, yeah, but those people didn't know that they would be affected.
Sure.
So I think it's fair.
So is the window being extended or we're opening a new window?
No, it's just for these people
Okay,
that
yeah, okay.
are affected.
Gotcha.
It's not everybody, it's just the people that are affected by the.
Well, the only thing I would say is I know that there's a lot of questions as it relates to folks, you know, and the various leaves that are available to them, the various options that they have, so, you know, I would say that if there is a comfortability amongst the board, this probably helps clarify at least one piece of it, if we feel like we can move forward. It gives one more piece of that puzzle for folks trying to decide what they want to do.
Ask a question. So it says if a position is restored during the first semester, the teacher will have the right to return to that position. What happens to the position that they presently will occupy then?
Just say it again one more time.
So they got ripped into a new position.
Right.
Their position reopens up again.
Correct.
What happens to the position they're presently in? That just gets.
We would have to fill.
Oh, so you'd have to
Yeah.
find someone to fill that
Yeah.
position they're presently.
And that would follow the normal
For example, let's
process.
use kindergarten, because that's one, you know, we look at kindergarten. If we need to put a kindergarten section back because our enrollment went up, then that person they can go back to where they came from.
So,
And then the position they left would just go through the normal process.
so are we filling with a sub or are we going to fill with a full-time position?
Well, I would think because we have people on the RIF list that we would entertain moving
That's
one of
what-
those
okay.
that have the right certification.
Okay, so kind of go back to the pool. Okay.
Right. It could be that we may not have someone in that,
Sure.
we'd have to do something else. So.
Veronica, is it your recommendation that we approve the enrollment tonight?
It is my recommendation if you feel comfortable, but if you do not, I recognize that as well.
I'm fine, I read it, I'm good.
I will say it will help us keep things moving, and unfortunately, I have to share with you that things are moving so quickly, and time is approaching quickly, and although it's not in a timely manner that we are accustomed to working, I think it truly will help us keep things moving, and that's how quickly things are changing. So I would recommend that we vote to accept this MOU. That's
So
my
would
recommendation.
you want us to like do it at the end as
Yes.
5.8? So
Is
usually
that what you
let's do
want?
5.2 to 5.7 and then add it.
It'll become 8.1.
8.1.
Yeah, we're just
Okay.
gonna move it on
Oh,
as an
okay.
addendum after 7.6.
Right,
And
so
we
then
will have
figure out-
public participation at the end, because Amy shared that the gentleman who had wanted to speak to us had provided his information and phone number, so we'll do public participation as at the 9:1.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. So-
Okay, so now we're
Okay,
going
now
to.
it's-
Now we're at 5.
Yeah. So I'd like the board to consider tonight, on a consent agenda basis, items 5.2 through 5.7. Those items on the license side are extra duty. There's 2 different extra duties on there. It's not a repeat. There's 2 separate ones that are much different from each other. Substitute resignation, supplemental resignation for 2021, correction from a co-assistant coach from the July 3rd, and supplemental positions for 2021.
So 5.2 through 5.5? Or
7.
5.7? Oh, got it, yeah, got it. Okay, I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 5.2 through 5.7.
Okay. Okay, great.
Any comments or questions? You'll call the roll, please.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Vicki Donovan Lyle.
Yes.
Shannon Sapersky.
Yes.
Bruce Von Slutsky.
Yes.
And then 6.1 is an addendum that did not appear Friday when it came out, so it's supplemental positions as well. We put them on as a separate.
I move approval of item 6.1.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions?
This mentions the virtual orientation. Do we know when those are gonna be yet, or?
On six.
6.1.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Yeah,
skipped ahead.
exactly.
I skipped ahead.
I was like, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't see that.
You'll call the roll, please.
Bruce Lonswitsky,
Yes.
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Vicki Donovan Lyle,
Yes.
Shannon Sapersky,
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Thank you. Also tonight, I'd like the board to consider on a consent agenda basis, items 7.2 through 7.6. On the classified side, those are personnel actions, additional time, a retirement, unpaid leave, and resignation.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 7.2 through 7.6.
I'll second.
Comments or questions?
Same question.
So you're asking about the virtual
yeah, do we have any idea what
orientations.
those are gonna be?
Couple things, we met with elementary principals today. They're looking to send like a virtual aspect of the orientation piece out to their families. We're also looking, and we do have approval from the health department on this. Veronica and I were in with a meeting with him last week with other superintendents. August 25th through the 28th, those 4 days, we're gonna have the staggered starts under the yellow plan. We're looking for elementary teachers to do almost like a orientation / open house, 15-minute, 20-minute increments with each family, parents, not parents, what have you, and the student to introduce themselves, meet in person, get them a Chromebook, get them any other supplies they may need.
Okay.
And then that's half your question, but we're also I'm meeting with high school principals tomorrow on how we want to make that look at the high school level. Probably going to be a lot different. We're not going to have families go in and meet teachers.
Yeah.
Maybe more of like a drive-through tied in with an online orientation. Pictures at this point are on hold.
Just webcam maybe?
Every kid wants.
Snap a.
Yeah, possibly do that. That would work. But that is in the process. And we're hoping to have that communication out sooner than later by the end of the week, hopefully. So.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? You'll call the roll, please.
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Vicki Donovan Lyle,
Yes.
Shannon Sapersky,
Yes.
Bruce Lonswitsky.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
and now, thank you. Now, item 8.1 would be the memorandum of understanding, correct?
No, public participation.
No,
She
we're
just
gonna-
moved
No,
it.
because we moved
So,
the
okay.
MOU to that.
I'll move approval on item 8.1.
I'll second.
Document we just read, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm down. I'm caught up.
Any comments or questions? You'll call the roll, please.
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Vicki Donovan Lyle,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Bruce Lonswitsky,
Yes.
Shannon Sapersky.
Yes.
Okay, and now we have Brandon Williams, who had asked for public participation, so I told Amy to let him know we'd meet at the end. So Brandon, if you're watching, we're calling. I don't have very long. Let's try to do it. 9 first. Right here. I don't know that this number is right. We have 859-512-8315.
On camera.
Yes. I think this number is inaccurate, so I'm gonna try calling from my cell. So I don't know why it didn't like it on here. Operator error. Calling for Brandon Williams, please. Hi, this is Vicki Lyle calling from the Sylvania Board of Education. You'd requested the opportunity to participate in public participation. I'm well, thank you. We appreciate your time this evening. If you could kindly state your name and address for the record and then provide us with your comments, we would appreciate it.
Can you turn up the volume or put it by the microphone?
I can't get any longer. This is as long as it gets.
What is that?
Okay, thank you. If you want to share your comments with us this evening?
Yeah, I was just, we have a son who he first grade is training in, and our big concern with the word was the remote learning. He's on an IEP, and for him at least, it's just the need to be at least on where he is in school a couple days a week was the social interaction with other kids and his IEP and his IDP teacher and his teachers and staff just very important for us for his well-being and his education and that was our big concern. It was just when we all started this back in the springtime, both my wife and I work full time. I work almost full time with him, and it's just he needs that structure of the everyday school schedule and the interaction with the teachers and the staff and the other kids. So that was our our biggest concern.
Thank you very much. You will be hearing from our Assistant Superintendent, Tim Ziroff. He'll be giving you a call to discuss your concerns and address those moving forward.
Thank you much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that,
We're moving along. I think at this point, we have item 310. Do we have a need for an executive session this evening? I don't believe we do.
so I think we need to, so we're set for Thursday, the
Set for
13th at
Thursday.
5 o'clock,
Yep.
subject to her availability.
And I'll try to confirm her tonight.
Well, we're meeting regardless.
We're meeting regardless, we may adjust the time,
Sure.
5 is
Yeah.
not good for her.
We're gonna have to need to vote on an MOU,
Correct.
so to add her to make sure that we can have two things. That'd be great. Correct.
And do you have all the clarity you need for communications?
I do.
Okay.
I absolutely do.
Terrific. Well, is there anything for the good of the order? Anyone? Otherwise, I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
We'll call the roll, please.
Vicki Donovan Lyle.
Yes.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Jan Sapersky.
Yes.
Bruce Vanslutsky.
Yes.
Greg Bell.